What's up, everybody? Seller Club Podcast. This is Glenn, YouTube channel Hustler Hacks with my boy Kenny.
Yo, what is up, Ken? The Hustle Bee. Before we start, let's drop that beat.
Very special episode today. There's a lot going on in the eBay world and a lot that we should be covering, and also new updates on eBay.
Exactly.
So I guess before we get into that, though, what have you been working on the eBay side?
Man, on the eBay side, I've been trying to optimize my sales. Been trying to use the markdown tab, running sales. So just really experimenting. Right now, I'm experimenting between $10 off, $50 off, and 30% off. So I think that's kind of like, toying around, kind of just like what the buyers would want to see. What do you think about that, the markdown stuff?
I mean, I think the markdown stuff that we've tried have worked pretty good. I mean, during the little testing, I think we both tried two different types of things, because then even Sneakers Envy, another seller that we know, also tried some different experiments on the seller side, on different, running different sales and trying to get the buyer to get their attention, and different things work, I guess, depending on what you're selling, brand new or pre-owned. But I would definitely give that a shot if you're trying to, lure in the buyers different ways.
For sure. I mean, if you guys didn't realize it yet, there's only two dudes in the podcast right now. So we're going to explain a little bit more about what and where Anna is about. So, we're at the end of the Q1. Q2 is about coming up. We're going to discuss a little bit more about that in the upcoming episode. We're going to, really dive in how our Q1 went. Glenn's been doing a lot more live on whatnot. I've been doing a lot more eBay. Anna's trying to, start cross-listing and stuff like that. So I think it'd be an interesting conversation. But, without further ado, the reason why Anna is not here, Anna is actually interviewing an eBay employee. So what about that, Glenn? What do you think?
Anna, our special Seller Club podcast correspondent out there in the fields in eBay, getting straight information.
Exactly. So that is part of the benefit of our partnership with eBay. We get to dig deep, ask the questions as sellers. What do we really want to know? And we're going to push our questions and make it to a point that they have to share what they can share. Of course, there are things that they can't share yet.
Behind the scenes.
Exactly. So we're going to try to figure out as much as we can. But talking about updates, if you guys don't know it yet, but eBay has acquired Terapeak, and then now it is actually called Product Research. So with that being said, Anna is actually interviewing the product manager of Product Research, which is Shelley Ball. Pass the mic to Anna.
Hey everybody, welcome to the first ever interview on the Seller Club podcast, and I'm so excited. Our guest today is the amazing Shelley Ball. And Shelley, I'm not going to introduce you too much because I want you to introduce yourself, but I've had the pleasure of knowing Shelley for a couple of years, and she works for eBay, and she's also an eBay seller. So Shelley, would you just introduce yourself a little and let us know what you do for eBay in your job, in your day job, and also what you do as a seller?
Hi, Anna. Thank you for having me. So I'm Shelley Ball. I'm a product manager on the seller experience team with eBay. I've been with eBay for June will be 12 years now, so quite a while.
That's awesome.
Long time. For the first part of my career with eBay, I worked on the monetization team, and so I managed the platform that charged the seller fees as well as enabled the fee promotions. Yeah,
Everyone's
not
favorite.
so popular, huh?
I mean, it needs to be managed well, for sure.
Oh, it's a lot.
Yeah.
But last year, I had the pleasure of moving over to the core seller experience team, where I took over the product everybody knows as Terapeak Product Research and the Performance tab in Seller Hub. And so, yeah, that's what I do now. So about me as a seller, I would say about, oh gosh, it was probably like 5 years ago or so, maybe 4 years ago or so, I got kind of serious with selling. And interestingly enough, I started selling because of using Terapeak back in 2019.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, right? I had gotten a call the night before eBay Open was to start and said, Shelley, can you get on a plane tomorrow and go to eBay Open? This was eBay Open 2019.
Wow.
Because the person who was supposed to represent Terapeak got stuck where he was traveling from and couldn't get home. And so I had to learn Terapeak literally like in a day. And this was when it was still a beta product. And so I always joke that it's kind of funny that I've been representing Terapeak for the last 5 years, yet it's only been a year ago since I took it over. And of course, I use it regularly as a seller. The reason I love it so much is it's really saved me a lot of money. And I mean, when I say by saved me a lot of money, I mean it's like I didn't leave money on the table for some of the items that I would have sold that I might have just asked a little too little money for, and I turned out I had some gems and made more money. So
that's awesome. Sometimes those items are just, you need that longer search history to really make a good decision about it when there's not a lot of comps. And I know from our first conversation ever, we talked about selling vintage Christmas stuff. And I know that, especially in kind of the vintage side of things, sometimes there's just not a lot of comps. They don't make it anymore. So it's hard to find. And Terapeak's an awesome tool for that. So you just shared a bunch of information about the product research updates on the Spring Seller Check-in from eBay a couple weeks ago. And then recently you also spoke on the eBay for Business podcast with Griff about it. And this week you're with us. And I actually love so much that we're kind of getting multiple touch points on these updates because there's so much to understand when there's a major update from eBay. So we're just really thrilled you're here with us at Seller Club. Thanks so much for being here. And I wanted to just jump on this one little thing before we really get into it. Why is it that we're talking about product research rather than talking about Terapeak? I think that's a little subtle shift, and I'm really curious about it.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And so, to be honest, you're still going to see Terapeak across eBay in certain places because it's embedded deeply because it's been our product for many years now. But the reason is that by using the name Terapeak, and that it's usually what people say when they're referring to product research, it's a couple of reasons. We bought Terapeak back in, I think it was like 2017. Terapeak doesn't exist anymore as a company, right? And they really don't power any technology for this product. It's really all of eBay's technology now. Yet because of, we're so used to calling it Terapeak, it has kind of held on to that name. Mm-hmm. But so it's really not necessary. And then one of the other reasons too is I'm very surprised at how often people think that to use product research, they have to pay a fee, or it's tied to a store subscription, or there's some subscription that they have to be a part of in order to access it. And so it has that kind of connotation that it costs something. And it doesn't. It's free. So long as you're on Seller Hub, you have access to all of the millions of items that have been sold up to the last 3 years, free of charge. It's just, you do have to be on Seller Hub, and it isn't available in My eBay. It is only under the Research tab in Seller Hub, but again, it's free. And so we really want to break away from that kind of, misrepresentation that it might actually cost something, and it doesn't.
For sure.
So going forward, product research is how we're referring to it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for explaining that. I think when Terapeak was first on my radar was actually when eBay acquired it, because it was like a separate subscription before that, right? It was like some kind of a paid service. And what a huge value add that has been for sellers ever since eBay took it over and incorporated it, like you said, for free into all the tools that are already available to us. that was like really when I started actually using it, because I wasn't, I was still pretty just scrappy with my business, and I didn't want to pay for any other subscriptions, and I was perfectly fine just using, searching the solds and everything really until that point. So I think that's great to point out, because I'm sure there are still a lot of sellers who think they hear Terapeak and they think, oh, it's a subscription service, but it's not anymore, and it's also not going to be known as Terapeak anymore. Although it's a big ship to turn, right? Like once we get that terminology in our heads, but that's
I
good
think
to know.
I still slip all the time and call it Terapeak. I'm trying, and I try every day. I kind of correct myself. No, product research, but I still say
Product
Terapeak.
research. Right. Yeah. Also, I think, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later, but there's also just a lot of sellers who are flying by the seat of their hearts, right? When they're sourcing, and research is like a bad word to them. They don't like doing research. So I think we need to talk about that a little bit later, but I think having these tools available is amazing, and I would encourage everybody to try them, even if you wouldn't consider yourself a researcher, right? But I'm going to save that conversation for a little bit later. But yeah, would you just tell us a little overview of what you've been touring around and talking about with this? The big thing is that it's basically coming to mobile, right? What do we need to know?
So, yes, it will be coming to mobile. One of the key things to remember is you got to please have your latest version of the eBay app, because it is on the newer selling landing page. So it does require the updated app, easy to find in your app store or however you get it from Android. And so, we're basically bringing in our first version, we're bringing the majority of the features that you can find in Terapeak on the desktop into the app. And the biggest benefit, of course, that we all love is that it goes back to 3 years of data. I mean, many of us, in a pinch, we'll do a search, and then we'll go sort, or we'll filter by sold, and then we get the last 90 days only. But that doesn't necessarily work for more rare or long tail items, or just things that aren't very common. So now having, literally having this in your hand when you're outsourcing or wherever you need it, you're going to be able to have that last 3 years. And you're still going to be able to see like the same kind of thing. We're still going to show you the average sold price, the sold price range. You'll be able to see, what % of sellers are offering free shipping, and then the average shipping price that they charged. And really fun of the total number sold and the total item sales. Like you'll be able to see the actual, $20,000 of these sold in the last 90 days or 6 months or however far back you want to look. You'll see the number of sellers who've sold the product. And we're going to have some sold price trend graphs that will be in there. Again, we're not, to be really clear, we're starting out with more of not a minimal product, because you are still getting most of the features.
Yeah.
But there's
sounds like a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot, but there's a handful of things that I want to be really transparent about that aren't going to be in the first version, and that one of the things that people love, which is sell-through rate, right? Because it's really important for us as resellers to understand how quickly we think we can turn over our inventory. Right. And so that is going to come. Absolutely, it's going to come. It's just not going to be necessarily in the first version. And then there's a number of things that we can bring in later too, like the ability to toggle between the active and the sold. I love that feature, because that way I can do my research and then also see what my competitors are currently selling it at.
Right.
So then I can just competitively price my item when I'm, at the time of listing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I think that's a really interesting choice too, just thinking about, this has obviously been a huge ask from sellers for a while, right? Get this kind of product research available on mobile. And I think it's really interesting that you guys have to wrestle with kind of those little conundrums, like, okay, do we go ahead and release like the main meat of the product and then, put in some more bells and whistles later? Or do we wait until we have everything totally perfect? And, I appreciate that at least for this time, it's the choice is let's go ahead and get it in your hands so you can start using it. I mean, that's going to have a real-time impact on everyone's business, like immediately when they can be able to use it. So what's it like to have to make those decisions, like weigh that out as an eBay team?
Yeah, I mean, of course, we'll use our own expertise, and then we ask our sellers. We'll get feedback to understand is it a deal breaker if we don't have this? Would you rather have the ability to search back 3 years of sold listings at the expense of, say, seeing sell-through rate right away? And the resounding majority was like, absolutely, just give it to us. And
right.
Right. And so again, it's like, do we wait? And again, we are going to gradually be releasing more and more features. But again, it was just, the common sense tells you that it's a great tool. Why hold it back?
Yeah.
And one of the key things too we really want is anybody who's adopting the usage of it is give us your feedback. After the first time you use it, there will be like this little card that pops up to give us your feedback.
Yeah.
And please do let us know when you start using it what you'd like to see in it. I think we probably know what most of you want to see in it, but we always get little nuggets of information in our feedback. So totally encourage you to give us your honest feedback.
Yeah, that's so good to know too, that when you see those kind of feedback prompts in the app or however you're using eBay, that actually is going to go back to Shelley and her team, and they actually want to know. So please send it. Please send the feedback. It does make a difference.
It does, and to speak to that, one of the first thing when I came on a year ago on this product, I would look at the feedbacks every day. That was literally my morning reading. I would go in and look at all the feedbacks, and that is what helped us get the funding to say, hey, we really need to move forward, because there's been some starts and stops with this over the years. I mean, I'm sure some of you have heard that, we had said we were going to put this on mobile years ago, and then we stopped. But the feedback was so strong that it was like the number one thing that kept popping up over and over and over is that they needed this in the mobile app. And that was how we were able to make the argument that we've got to do this. And so again, it was feedback. So that's how powerful feedback is.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. That's so cool. I mean, it makes perfect sense. You got to make your case for it, right? There's competing priorities all the time. So it's important to know that. That's a specific way in which sellers' voices really are heard, and that directly trickles into decisions and priorities. That's really cool to hear. Yeah. So I'm a nerd, so of course I was listening. I watched you talk about this at the Spring Seller Update. I heard you talk to Griff about it, and now I get to talk to you about it, which is awesome. I'm really excited about this feature myself. And one thing that you and Griff kind of discussed was the positive price aspect of product research. So there's basically some cleaning up of the search results, right? Where you're not having kind of those sales that aren't real sales that are like inflating the averages, or best offer sales that, they're now going to show the exact amount that they sold for, not just like the original price of the strike through or whatever. So I love that. It's like more accurate, and we don't have to try to be mentally factoring out, certain sales that turn up in the results, which is really cool. So if I got any of that wrong, please correct me. But that's what I took away from part of your conversation with Griff. But I was really curious if there's any specific updates and changes that you're personally just really excited about, like any little pieces of the puzzle that are most exciting to you.
Yeah, I guess, I think it's the same thing that everybody else is going to love, is that I don't have to guess anymore when I'm going to be out, right? Yeah. I'm going to be able to have access to real data. And that is one of the things people love and actually didn't even realize. Like, I again, after the seller check-in, I saw a lot of comments in the chats that when I had mentioned that product research shows the actual price sold, so if a best offer was accepted, it is the accepted price, not the asking price.
Right.
Most people didn't. A lot of people didn't realize that, and so that way you can feel confident that when you see this price that something sold for $100, that's actually the price. And then the ability to filter out the things that didn't really sell. Even it's kind of interesting. Even Search was asking us about that now. They're saying, "Oh, wait a minute, you guys are filtering out like unpaid items, and we're filtering out canceled items." And we're filtering out things that are outside the norms of a sale for a given category, because they're not they're not necessarily real sales. That's really valuable because you can trust that this is the real price range. This is right. And don't get me wrong, it's not perfect yet. There's still outliers that might still show up that, but like for instance, if you were going to go look for a black diamond, everybody knows about the black diamond
Yes. Disney VHS
tape, right?
Yes.
Wow, this one sold for $13,000. No, it did not. So we had to take those out because that kind of stuff that would make somebody believe like, I'm going to pay $50 for this. I'm going to be rich. No, you're going to pay $50 for this, and you're probably going to get $2 for it.
You're going to be stuck with it forever. Yeah.
Exactly.
No, that is very helpful to know because I think all of us have seen those, especially selling used, right, secondhand or vintage stuff. It's like, what is the deal with some of these sales? Like, what is this? This can't be real, right? Yeah. But it's good to know that there's actually a mechanism to weed that stuff out.
Yep.
Love it.
And that was something we implemented, I think it was towards the end of last year. It was just one of those enhancements that, when we got some periods of time, like when we knew it wasn't good, we knew we could be better. And so our engineers were able to figure out a way to get it done rather quickly. And it was one of those enhancements that we could just get out to just make you guys trust our data better. Because trust is really important because this is you spending your money on inventory. Right. And we don't want to falsely let you believe you can make more money on something than you really can. Right.
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
That data integrity was super important to us.
Yeah, well, and I think it's really remarkable how many different kinds of data you can just see all at once about the items. Like you kind of ran through them earlier, but just all the different metrics about, these items and even down to like, what percentage of sellers are selling this item with free shipping. I mean, Ken and Glenn and I talk about this all the time because we all kind of sell in sort of different categories, and whether or not to offer free shipping is very category dependent. And just having a rich history of that information is really helpful because, you're thinking about this item in your hand that maybe you're going to source and maybe not. Knowing whether or not you're going to take the hit on shipping or if it's reasonable to build in the cost or whatever is really important. So I think that having all that information really empowers us to make the best decision for our business and the categories that we sell in. And just the way that we want to run things, like I know for myself, I would like die on the hill for many years of like, I'm never going to offer free shipping because it's not free to ship stuff. That always just like drove me crazy. Yeah. And I've softened on that somewhat now only for certain things, but like that is really helpful information for me. Like, am I going to have to basically offer free shipping on this kind of thing? Is it going to push me out of my usual processes in some way that's going to be cumbersome? Like, it's good to know that stuff on the front end as much as possible. So I appreciate all of those different data points.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. That whole thing about you dying on the hill about not offering free shipping, I am so right in that camp with you, to be honest with you. Because
I love it.
I live on a coast, and selling collectibles, a lot of times the things that I'm selling are over £1.
Yes.
And until such time that the post office had introduced Ground Advantage, which has been a life changer for me.
Yes,
because,
agreed.
Right?
Agreed.
It's so much cheaper now. I don't have to worry about if it's over £1 that it's going to cost my buyers a ton or cost me a ton, right?
Yeah.
And so, because when I live in California, I always feel like, why are all my buyers in Florida? I have a lot of buyers in Florida.
Oh,
it seems
100%.
Like, right? And so so I typically don't offer free shipping unless, like if I find that I really have to offer it to be competitive, then I will. But I do it, a little bit begrudgingly. I'll do it, but I don't love it.
It's like if and only if, right? Especially for something that could even fathomably be over £1. I totally agree. I was on the other coast. I was on the East Coast, and I felt like I was always shipping stuff to California or Washington, and I would just be like, are you kidding me? Why is this 13-inch glass bladder going to Washington right now? Like, it was just really annoying. So, yeah. And it's tough, too, because you and I also have this in common. We're kind of everything sellers, right? Our inventory is somewhat miscellaneous. Mm-hmm. So there's a calculus that's different with basically every item. So again, that's why having those in the moment the ability to make those decisions in the moment of sourcing is so important, because we are thinking through that stuff when we're looking at stuff to source. But I'm just curious too, just speaking of sourcing, obviously product research on mobile, like I said, and like you have said, has been highly requested for a long time by buyers. But do you think that researching at the moment while you're sourcing is more important now than it used to be?
I think so, because I feel like that everything's gotten more competitive. I mean, with all the YouTubers and showing how you can resell, I just feel like, there's more resell. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. I just
or
feel
it just
like
looks like there is, because there's
right?
more,
Maybe it just
there's
looks
more
like
YouTube about it. Yeah, right.
And you can know, like when you go out, like when I go to a thrift store, I can identify the other resellers really easily nowadays, right? And so if I have this advantage that I have more than the 90 days than they do, it's great, right?
I was going to say, so you're not going up to them going like, hey, do you know about product research on mobile?
Although I have to admit, like a couple months ago, I noticed a woman, I liked something in her cart, and I had said something to her, because, I just talk to everybody.
Yeah.
And turns out she's a reseller. She knows Teresa Cox. She knows all these people. It was so funny. She was one of these, we had a lot of friends in common. I'm like, oh, look at her. I ran into her at my little local Morgan Hill, California Goodwill.
That's hilarious. I mean, also, though, who doesn't know Teresa Cox? She's a pillar of the community. So, but that is so funny.
Yeah. But it was just kind of funny that she knew, she knew her, I guess, from, maybe, I think she knew her from List Perfectly or something like that. But, But yeah, I mean, I can identify the other resellers. And so yeah, and again, like, with the, especially in collectibles, because I've made mistakes. I am the first person to admit that. I'm like, oh, I see this, and I'll look up, let's just say I'll look up something in Google Lens first, and then, that's my fast way of identifying what it is, and then I go over and I see a quick price in Solds, and it wasn't quite right, and I'm like, oh, I paid $16 for this, and I'm really only going to be able to sell it for $40 when I thought I was going to be able to sell it for $100.
Yeah.
And so I think this will just help me, help everybody just make better decisions and sourcing instead of picking up. I mean, if you're going to pick up something for $1, sure, that's kind of a no-brainer, right?
Yeah,
but if you're having to pay a little more money for something and your ROI isn't going to be as good as you thought, that's where you take a hit. And we've all done that, right? Where we've picked something that we thought we were going to do better on than we did, and we're just happy to get rid of it not at a loss.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And honestly, for me and where I am with my business right now, I am moving in my inventory, moving towards like paying up a little bit for just higher quality, higher dollar, higher ASP type of items, right? Mm-hmm. And I could see, I mean, like you said, I mean, my average cost of goods, like of the lifetime of my store, is like 82 cents an item, which is ridiculous.
Amazing.
But seriously, that's why it's hard for me to spend $10 on something, because I'm like, oh my gosh. But I know that this is like the natural evolution of my business. And, I had a lot lower stakes in the past of sourcing all of my items. And so I would not be inclined to use product research all the time on the go. Even if it had been available to me back then, I probably wouldn't have used it that much, because it's so easy to just go like, well, it's $1 experiment, whatever. Mm-hmm. But I really am trying to tighten things up in that regard with my own business. So I will definitely be using this a lot more than I would have in the past, even if it had been available. But, it's not really because I don't love numbers and research. I definitely do. But, sometimes, like I said, it's just like, well, am I going to stand here and like research every little thing, or am I just going to kind of go with it and sort it out later, because it's just a low investment cost anyway. So I just kind of rolled that way. But there really are some people who just do not want to research on the go, or, they feel weird about being on their phone or blowing their cover as a reseller or whatever. But like we've been talking about, this research component is going to be even more important for us to make good decisions while we're sourcing. So I'm just curious, like, if you have thoughts about that on a broader level of, why does having this kind of a tool, why is it going to make us better sellers? And, what do you think it's going to do for us if we do kind of commit to incorporating it, if maybe we haven't used it before?
Yeah, I think success breeds success, and knowledge is power. It's one of those things like, the better decisions you can make, the more. Let me step back for a second. I would say when I look at myself as a seller, even 4 years ago, versus how I am as a seller today, I'm better because of the tools that I have come to learn to use. And it's because it's helped me make better decisions. There was a time where I would buy something for $1 because I could sell it for $5.
Yeah.
Now, are you kidding me? I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. Right. And like exactly what you're saying is picking up the low dollar items to make, 10x or 20x. I'm sort of tiring of that. Yeah. I now typically don't touch anything unless I'm going to sell it for $20 or more. Totally. I just have upped my standard, right? And so all of these tools that you have access to just help you make better decisions, and with less effort, make more money. Because
we're growing up, Shelley. We're growing up.
Right? And, I will say, and I say this to everybody I know, that we undervalue our time.
Yeah.
And so we really need to think carefully about how much time it's going to take us to clean something or photograph something or do all of the things or pack something for the amount of money that we're going to sell it for. And so that's why when you have any tool in your arsenal that you can, use to help you make better decisions, like, if you were going to use, because something hadn't sold in the last 90 days, and now you can see that, 6 months ago, one and only one of these sold in the last 6 months, and I'm going to have to pay $5 for something. I'm going to sit on that for a long time just to try and get $15.
Right.
So when you think of the $5 over time, $10 over time adds up to a lot of money. And the more profitable your business can be, the more, that's what we're here to do, right? We're here to make money. It's fun, but we're here to make money too.
Amen. Yes, we are. It is fun. Well, and there's so many considerations. Your storage space, how much space is this thing going to take up? How many of my shipping supplies am I going to spend on this? I have to triple box it with packing peanuts. Those are all considerations, right? But I really appreciate that. I'm a big proponent of the idea that, it's not just your money that's your resource. Your time is your resource. Your emotional bandwidth is your resource. Your space is your resource. All of these are really valuable things that we have to value, right? We have to recognize the value of them when we're making these decisions.
Yeah. So. And even I'll say another thing that was a learning for me, I just want to share is I like to buy online auctions. I'll buy auction lots where I get a number of things, right? And I part it out. I keep some of it. I sell some of it. I give some of it away, whatever I want to do with it. And I found even recently, just a month ago, I drove 35 or 40 minutes away to go pick up something that at the end of the day, I'm really only going to make a $30 profit on. And in hindsight, I look back and I think, okay, there was my gas. There was over an hour of my time.
Right.
I still haven't photographed it and listed it or packed it. And I just literally made no money.
Yeah.
Because of all of those other factors that were super important to remember. And I will stop doing that. Again, I look at it as tuition, right? You learn.
Yeah, for sure.
You learn as you go.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, and I think when you're just starting, especially, and you are having that magical experience of wow, I just turned $1 into $10. That was wizardry. You're wow. And then you get to that next aha of this can actually scale up and be a business or even a full-time income for me, that's super exciting, but it does require a lot of refining along the way. And I think that's something too. For those of us who definitely started out really scrappy, started out entranced by the 10xing your dollar, totally understandable, nothing wrong with that at all. But, when you're now going to be, instead of leaving money on the table, right, you're leaving items at the source instead of taking them with you because you're you know what, I'm going to pass on that. It's not meeting my new, more mature standards. And, this type of product research is helping you make really sound decisions. It's amazing. Running a business side hustle or full-time business or whatever, it is incredible how much really just comes down to the quality of your decision making. And like you said, I totally agree. When you have the right tools and you're mastering the use of these tools, that's just giving you a leg up on your decision making, which is so important. But those items might still be great in the right setting. Maybe somebody will still flip them and make a 20, and that's great for them. Maybe they're just starting out and you're leaving some stuff in the wild for the people who are more towards the beginning of their journey, who are looking for stuff like that, looking for stuff that they can turn their $1 into $10 or into $20. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with that, but I know you and I have similar business models basically, and so I'm not surprised to hear that we're on the same growing curve with it, and we're refining our standards and our criteria for things. Yeah.
So and on the same token, it's like, where it's like it can stop you from making some bad decisions. And other times, like I've found, I have an example like recently, which I'll share, that not recently, I say last summer. I walked into a Goodwill at lunchtime because I just needed a little mental break. And I walked in, and I've told this story on one of, I think on the Boss Facebook page. But I walked into a Goodwill one day, and there was this gleaming white-handled knives that just shining as I walked in, and I knew what they were. I knew that. I'm like, oh my God, those are Cutco knives.
Yeah.
And had I not used Terapeak, this is an example. So when I went, I bought them. They were, kid you not, this is a 32-piece set. The biggest one they make that retails for $3,000. I had recently come to find out, it was $22.
Oh my gosh.
$21.89 to be exact.
Wow. I love that you remember that.
I couldn't get those bad boys in my cart fast enough and pay them out the door, right? So when I was researching, just by looking at, by the solds really quick, just a quick comp in the store, I saw that, I saw a couple sets for like $700 or $900. I knew I was going to make my money back, right? But it wasn't, and there were none on the site. There literally weren't even any active listings for this set on the site at that moment. So I came home, I looked on Terapeak, product research, and I saw two sets had sold a year prior. One for $1,580 and the other for $1,500. And these were full sets of the same one I just had. And I thought, you know what, okay, because I was going to list them for like $9. I really was going to list them for $9. But then, a little bug was in my head, and I'm like, you know what? There's no others. I'm going to list them higher. So I listed them for $1,900, thinking I'll take the first offer of $1,500 that I get. Well, that was a Saturday night that I listed them, cleaned them, listed them, and Sunday morning I wake up and I see I have a sale for $1,900 plus shipping. My knives had sold in less than 24 hours.
Wow, talk about not leaving money on the table.
That's right, and again, I have so many stories like that of where I really thought something was worth less than it was, but then when I really dug in and used product research, I got some information that helped me make a couple extra bucks.
Well, that's a great, obviously great illustration, because I'm thinking of times that I've done that same thing, like in Goodwill or whatever, where I see, for me, it's been like stuffed animals. Like, wow, this looks really well made. It looks pretty old. I wonder if it's worth anything. And I just look at solds. But in that scenario, it's like lucky for me that there was something to see in the limited time frame that the solds gives you, because had there not been, I probably would have been like, oh, well, I guess I'll just leave this here. And is, a $200 stuffed animal for $1.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I know, amazing, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. But I love that. So obviously the longer time frame was to your benefit there. I was just thinking through as you're telling that story, like, what were all the specific metrics that you looked at that helped you? Obviously it was like the sold prices from before, or from those previous sales, and you could only see them because there was an extended timeline to look at. And you probably saw that, obviously the absence of a bunch of listings, like, it's very rare. So that was good to know. Probably confirmed for you what they were, right?
Yep. It confirmed that this item was not easy to find. And I was the only one on eBay at that moment. I had the only used set. I did end up finding a new one, but and they wanted $3,000 some for it. Whatever. I found it later, but a used one, just like I had.
Right.
there was none. And I was missing a couple knives, by the way. So I really was like,
Wow.
I was just really aiming, I was shooting high. And
For sure.
And I will tell you the other funny thing is this was a brand new buyer, zero feedback. The person had just registered. So, of course, imagine how scared I was. I get it. I'm right there with you. It's like, oh my gosh, new user. Am I going to get scammed?
Do they even know what they're doing? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, they paid, I shipped. You know what? And you know what? All is well.
Yeah.
They paid. Everything was good. I shipped. And, I did send a little note to the person just to make sure they were a real person. I'm like, oh, hi, thank you for buying the knives. I'm going to ship these out for you first thing Monday morning.
Yeah.
Just to put a real, just to see if I would get a reply.
Let them know you're real. Yeah.
And get a reply, right? And make sure that this is, and they're like, oh, thank you. We're looking forward to getting them. Great. Ship them right away, right? I know a lot of people are scared to ship to first-time buyers, but this was the most expensive thing I had ever sold on eBay.
Yeah, yeah. They were somebody who had like a saved search, but if they're a brand new user, probably not.
No, I don't know. It's really hard to say. There was a case where I did sell something like really interesting. Like I was, everybody know. I think a lot of us resellers know about Glassy Baby. It's one of those little holy grails we always try and find. And I found one day and the funny thing is the pattern name was Miracle, and it was certainly a miracle that this thing was there. And the fact that I sold it within 1 hour, exactly 1 hour and 6 minutes after I listed it for $250. I thought maybe I left money on the table, but then when I look back, I'm like, no, you looked it up, you found the comps. It was very, you were very much in line. You even asked a little more, but you know what? It was probably a saved search.
Yeah.
And that's what alerted the buyer to this thing that there were no others on eBay. They saw the Glassy Baby Miracle, and that triggered the thing, and then it came into an instant sale for me. So. That's one of the things we need to also sit back and think is sometimes you sell something fast because you found your right buyer. It's not that you underpriced it. I mean, sometimes maybe, but you also found your right buyer who was looking for that thing and had a saved search for it.
Well, yeah, and if you do use product research, then you can have a lot of confidence in how you price it. Even if you are pricing it high, and it sells fast, that doesn't necessarily mean that you underpriced it. Maybe that really was just like they were waiting to jump on it as soon as it was available. I know that I have been that person before with some of my safe searches. And actually I love that feature because it just helps, it's keeping tabs on it for me, and I don't have to constantly think about it and go search myself. So I really appreciate that as a buyer. Yeah. And I do buy a good bit of stuff on eBay. But well, I'm wondering too if there's anything else, like as Shelley the seller, right? If there's anything else that you tend to look at the most when you're making those sourcing decisions, like we said, all those different data points and information that you can see right in your hand now on mobile, or soon, very soon, it's rolling out. But what are your favorite kind of metrics to look at?
Well, sell-through rate is important, but I probably don't. To be honest, I probably don't rely on that so much because I am willing to sit on things for a long time if I know they're really good. If eventually I'm going to get a good price for it. Yeah. And to be fair, I have a full-time job. I do this as a hobby. This is really fun for me, and I look at it as prep for one day when I retire, I'm going to become a real full-time seller. And now I do this is a hobby for me. And I of course I use it as a learning experience too, because as a seller, when you feel the pain points that our sellers are feeling, it makes you much more sensitive and wanting and feel that sense of urgency to fix things that are broken. Right. But for overall, I would just say, I look at sell through a little bit. I look at the free shipping aspect a lot, especially if it's a heavy item, because I am not going to offer free shipping on a heavy item. And then I'll try and look and see how many have sold, and not necessarily just the sell-through rate, but just how many have sold right in the last X period or X time, 6 months or whatever. Because some things I am willing to sit on, and other things I'm not. Because especially something large, I don't have a storage unit yet, and so size matters for me. It's like how much room in my garage is this going to take?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's a real consideration. And like you were saying earlier, especially for those of us, like I'm putting you and I in the same boat, Shelley, where we're maturing our sourcing approach, we're maturing about the types of things that we're spending our money on, which just means that if we're paying up a little bit for something, that's that many dollars that we cannot spend on something else, you know?
Yeah.
So we can't spend that on the next thing that we come across because we've already spent it on this item here. And so we really want to make sure it's worth it.
Yeah. And especially for sellers who are really, this is their business. This is their livelihood.
Yeah.
And that's even more important because that money that you're tying up of your own means that if there was this fabulous opportunity to come up and that was the only $100 you had, and you now don't have the $100 to spend on something that came, up in the future, you need to, that it just helps you be a little more discriminating and and careful about what you're actually going to buy and spend your precious dollars on.
For sure. Well, knowledge is power. You heard it here first. I'm sure no one's ever heard that before.
Of course not. No, really? I made that up today.
Yeah, it's a Shelley Ball original for sure. Oh my gosh. Well, Shelley, thanks so much for talking with me about this. I'm super excited about it. I feel like this is very timely for me. Like the way that I am, advancing in my business and upgrading and leveling up the way that I'm sourcing things. Like, thanks for putting this out right when I needed it.
Well, I'm really happy with it. And so, and one of the things that we get asked a lot, well, when's it coming out? When's it coming out?
Yeah.
And, I can't share the exact date. We have a date, of course, in mind, but I would just say keep an eye out for it in the coming weeks. This isn't months. I'd say keep an eye out in the coming weeks. Make sure you have the latest and greatest app.
Yes.
And then anybody who was on the seller check-in, we are making sure that, because you know how eBay does things. We don't roll everything out to just the whole user base all on the same day.
Right.
We'll ramp up, slowly to make sure things are working right, get some feedback. But I wanted to make sure that at least the sellers who had attended our check-in the other day were included in our in the first group of sellers that would be included. So,
awesome.
Like I said, keep an eye out. If you were at the seller check-in, keep an eye out.
Yes, and if you find it in your app, if you're looking every day and you see it there, give feedback about it because that will just help things to roll forward from there. And I mean, I'm super excited to have this in our hands now. Definitely looking forward to more bells and whistles, but yeah, it couldn't have come at a better time. It's about to be yard sale season for a lot of the country. It's like perfect. So
yeah. And one other thing that's kind of important I should mention is that, when you're on this, like I said, make sure you're on the latest version of the app. If you hadn't seen the demo or you hadn't attended the seller check-in, you'll just scroll, you'll go on your selling tab, which is the little icon in the bottom right-hand corner of your phone. And then just scroll down a little bit. And if you have tasks or drafts, it'll be like right under there. You'll see product research, and then you'll have a link to get started, and it'll take you right into the flow where you can enter your first search.
Perfect. Thank you for outlining that too, since this is an audio format. And we do have in our show notes from last week's show, we have some links to the video from the Spring Seller check-in.
Oh, good.
So you guys can go check that out as well. And you can, see Shelley's presentation about this from the main stage. There were also breakout sessions. So if you're just hungry, thirsty for more information about this, definitely check out our show notes from last week. And you'll find all that you need. And of course, keep checking to see if you're in that group and if it rolls out to you quickly. And those of us that we're going to do our duty to make sure that we give good feedback and it can get to everyone else as soon as possible.
Welcome back, Anna. That was such an awesome interview. I'm glad you're able to do that.
Oh, thank you so much. I had so much fun, if you couldn't tell, talking to Shelley Ball. She is just delightful. She has all the angles. She has all the perspectives, and she's just so fun to talk to. Seriously, that's been my experience with her every time. So I'm really grateful we got to have her as our first ever interview. She was so great.
First ever, and many to come for the next podcast episodes with eBay.
Yeah.
Nice little interviews.
Yep, for sure. Well, guys, make sure you stay tuned. We will see you on the next podcast. And also, this podcast is brought to you by eBay. Make sure you follow eBay for Sellers on Instagram to keep up to date with all the events and all the updates, all the seminars, and all the fun stuff that eBay is doing for this year. And also, this episode is brought to you by List Perfectly, the official cross-listing tool for Seller Club Podcast. Use our code SellerClubPod to get 30% off on your first month of subscription. So guys, we will see you next time. Peace.
Yes. Over
See
and
ya.
out.